Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Tuna Bites. We're back for 2024. Who knows when we'll come back, but you should take advantage now and listen to us now because we're here. Anyway, it's 2024 season. 2024 season. Jags all the way. Go Gators. And let's see if we can let's not let Jonathan win this year. Okay? That's the goal, all of us. You know, I won't send this to Jonathan, so it can be just collaborative 11 people effort against one. But until then, how about we talk about the keepers and maybe this coming draft this coming in a week. So, Nathan, Reid, how's it going?
I just have one question, Richard.
Yes.
I don't remember the last time we did an episode. Did we even cover and actually say good job, Jonathan, you won the championship at all?
It's not needed.
Well, I mean, we had.
I tell you what, I don't think we have. Why don't you go ahead and read?
There's a conflict of interest.
Congratulations to the champ.
Good job, Jonathan. Good job.
Good job, Jonathan. In all seriousness, finally got it. Took you 3 years. It's good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Richard. Yeah, actually, you know what? When we did have an episode last year, we did talk about you and Jonathan just going hard after it, and you know, it was fitting that you and Jonathan were in the championship. So,
and then there was one, Richard.
I got to tell you, I've been thinking about this all summer. There's one trade I couldn't make happen, and I'm not even sure I want to tell you, but there's one trade I just couldn't make happen. I'm not going to tell you who it is. And I feel like that trade, not being able to make that happen, is what cost me the championship. I gotta be honest.
Richard, you know, that's last year. Come on, man. It's a new year. It's not like you're gonna, trade or draft.
New year, new us.
I'm bitter. I feel like I'm the Cleveland Browns of the NFL. Okay.
I want to hear. You're leaving us all anticipation right now. We want to know what was the deal that Richard didn't make.
This is a no boundary show.
Let's just say I kind of expected TJ Hawkinson to get hurt. And I couldn't fix that problem for my team.
Couldn't fix it. I
tried. Couldn't fix it. Anyway.
Wasn't me, so.
Definitely wasn't you.
You know what, Richard? You know what? Hey, Richard, this is where I come and I make you feel really good right now. Make you feel better. Okay. Yeah. You know what I regret?
What's that?
From last year, not the trade I did make.
What?
Not trading with my brother for CeeDee Lamb before he exploded and just went nuclear last year.
That was a pretty good trade for me. I really liked that trade.
Yeah. There you go.
One of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Well, we'll see if it happens, we'll see if it happens this year.
Yeah.
It's still questionable.
I don't care if he does this year. He's not on my team.
CD who? What?
CD what?
Well, let's that we had the keepers picked this weekend, and I thought there were some good surprises that we could talk about. I thought we'd go ahead and start. Nathan, you and I were talking a little bit about it before, and I told you I wanted to wait to find out before you told me what you thought. So I wanted to go ahead. The first one I want to talk about is what is the biggest one or two, you could pick two if you want, one or two keepers that actually happened. What were pick one or two keepers that you were surprised that got kept?
I was surprised that got kept.
Yep.
Well,
I'm giving Reid some prep. He can give some time.
This is great, Richard, because he picks so early in the draft. It's let's just put it on him now. We'll get some insight.
I was honestly surprised that Donald kept Joe Burrow. I guess I shouldn't be because Donald, he kept Tom Brady for pretty much his career. But Joe Burrow's coming back from an injury. There's still a lot of questions about the Bengals offensive line. They got smacked around by the Bucs last night or 2 nights ago, whenever it was. And, that surprised me a little bit. So that Joe Burrow, I think he's going to have a good year. I don't think he's going to be bad by any means if he can stay healthy. I still think he's probably one of the top 7 quarterbacks, in the NFL. But that surprised me a little bit.
Reid, what do you think?
That didn't surprise me for Donald just because quarterbacks. We know how our league are. There's some people who just covet the quarterback so much, and that I guess that didn't surprise me. Man, surprises. Most of it there wasn't too well. Okay, I will go there. This one did surprise me. I was, and I guess I shouldn't be like Donald, but I was surprised that Josh kept Brock Purdy. So, he had Breece Hall. Of course, that was easy. But I guess I was just with the other guys that he had, I was surprised that he ended up keeping Brock Purdy. Not that Brock Purdy's bad. It's on a great offense. But I guess I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say those are my top 2. I don't know why this surprises me, but it shouldn't have. But Jalen Hurts being kept by John Mack. I don't know why I didn't think about the fact that he's an Eagle and that he would keep him, but I didn't think he would.
That was locked. I knew he was going to keep Hurts. There's no way he'll ever let him go.
It was like a quick surprise. Like, oh yeah, it's one of those. What? No.
Yeah. Where you realize you're like, oh yeah, duh.
Yeah. What was the surprise? I'm gonna give you another one. I was also I'm gonna go with not kept, and maybe you guys can tell me what your biggest, maybe a surprise that was not kept. I was surprised that 0 tight ends were kept.
Kelsey was let go, but that was Jonathan, right? Jonathan had Kelsey. He traded.
I had Dwayne pegged for keeping Andrews until he traded for Kenneth Walker.
Kyron
Walker, yeah.
Williams.
Kyron Williams, there it is. AW, both of them.
Who's Kyron Walker? Is he a rookie?
Combining two.
Sleeper alert!
Hey, Reid, get a pot for Richard. He needs some coffee too.
Come on, old men need their coffee, Richard. Come on now.
Right. Right.
Any surprises for you guys on who wasn't kept?
What's that?
So any surprises on who wasn't kept?
Well, who wasn't kept? We talked about. We just kind of were. I guess. It's hard. So here's what's interesting. I think about just the teams for keepers. Now, of course, we kept 2, so that really made it hard for some teams. Other teams, it wasn't hard. But Jonathan, of course, was loaded. He won the championship. He was loaded. He had way more guys than he keep. But the other team that honestly I think had the second best keeper selection was Darryl.
Yep.
And Darryl had. If you go back, I know his roster's been, it's gone now in the pool. But if you would have gone back in his roster and looking just for this year, you could make a case for 5 to 6 guys to be a keeper. Depending on who your keeper, the guys you would have, but you could make a case for a lot of guys to be keepers. So,
yeah,
I guess I was a little surprised that he picked Jonathan Taylor over Gibbs. But again, that's, he already was keeping on Rob the Lions. And let's not forget Jonathan Taylor did have an incredible season, and they've got a good offensive line. And if Richardson's healthy, I don't know. So, maybe he thinks that he's going to be really good this year. So maybe I was a little surprised by that, but not like, it's kind of just, so.
Yeah.
But yeah. And to your point, Richard, you were talking, so tight ends, I think when it came down to it, it is fascinating. We're keeping 2. So, this is the first time, since when, right? That nobody kept the tight end. Like no tight ends have been kept, and it's all back in the purple. But I think one of the ways you can explain that is obviously Dwayne, made a trade for Kyron Williams. And then Jonathan and Darryl were so loaded. They couldn't keep Porter and Kelsey. So, I guess, it's kind of just the way things unfolded. So it'll be fascinating in the draft with all these tight ends available.
Yeah.
Well, it's also we're entering a season in the NFL or a period in the NFL where tight ends are no longer at a premium. For about 5 years, tight ends were a wasteland outside of Kelsey and Mark Andrews,
Yeah.
and maybe
And
Dawson.
Gronk and
Yeah, Gronk from before he retired. But other than that,
George
I mean,
Kittle
you got
maybe.
past the top
Yeah.
5 tight ends, it was awful. You're streaming
Yeah.
somebody that, 1 week they'll get you 2 points, and next week they might get you 8. Like, they were telling people to stream tight ends. I mean, it was awful. Now, I mean, you look at the tight ends, it's pretty deep. I mean, you got young guys who, in these high passing offenses, Dalton Kincaid, Laporta, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, that kid that they're hyping up in Arizona. Then you've still got some of the other, not as potent guys, but still guys that are going to be there and who are going to get catches. So, I mean, it's not – it used to be you had Kelsey or Mark Andrews, you had the advantage. It was a positional advantage if you had one of those guys. And I don't feel like it is anymore, especially with Kelsey, because Kelsey's getting older and, you can't ride that high forever, and eventually he's going to come down. So I'm sure he may still have gotten kept if Jonathan didn't have other options, but that's my opinion on the tight end position. But
well, I mean, and history is showing that if you have a tight end on your team from an NFL perspective, like a high functioning usage for, like a Kelsey or a Gronk or a, now Laporta and various other people, that you like, those are Super Bowl winning teams now. It's very little of these teams that are even contending for the Super Bowl don't have one of those tight ends. So it makes sense that a lot of teams are starting to switch over to making sure they have a high functioning tight end that does more than just blocking, but is actually running routes. And that goes just with it being a passing league right now too. It's like, how do you open up an advantage for your passing? So.
Yeah. Going back to surprises real quick, Richard, not necessarily surprised, but I wanted to get your feedback. You chose Olave over 2 pretty high profile in name running backs over the last couple of years, in Eckler and Derrick Henry. What was your thought process there? What was not intriguing about keeping one of those guys?
So I'll start with Eckler first. Eckler went downhill a lot last year. Now he went to a new team. That's part of the problem. What I have with him is that he went downhill and he went to a new team. So for me, Eckler was just immediately was not going to be a player I wanted to keep because of that. It was just Henry went to a new team, but he was still really good last year. And if we had 3 keepers, obviously he would have been my third. And I actually was going back and forth between Henry and Olave. But what I ended up with was realizing that I had to think about the draft, and knowing that I wasn't going to be able to pick until the 4th. What was I more comfortable with going into the 4th? I have 3 picks in the 4th, but what was I more comfortable going into the 4th with? Having 1 wide receiver and 1 running back, or 2 almost probably close to top 10 wide receivers.
Yeah.
And to me, by the time the 4th round came about, wide receivers were going to be really difficult to get that high functioning or that high fantasy point outlook. I feel like wide receivers are harder to come by for those higher level ones. And I felt like running back, there's probably a way to draft my way into a functional running back room. Sure. Whether that comes to true or not, it was essentially it kind of sets my draft in a certain way. So to the way I want to attack it, and I felt more comfortable doing it that way than keeping a running back and a wide receiver. So
makes sense. I was just curious because, there's still, if you look at any fantasy articles or rankings and stuff like that, I mean, Henry's still up there. Eckler's fallen down, but Henry, just with the touchdowns and stuff like that, he's still got a little bit of a,
I'll tell you the positive and negatives between the two and why I was back and forth. Henry, the positives is that he still seems like he's almost aging like Adrian Peterson. Almost. Yeah. I'm not going to say he is, but he keeps aging and he doesn't seem to want, but he's maintaining his level of intensity and greatness longer than people expect. Downside is that he's going to a new team that has an offensive line that was terrible last year, and I don't think they improved. So that's the downside. Who knows what that's going to look like when it comes to that team. Lamar Jackson being a runner himself takes away. He's probably not going to get passing yard or passing downs, so he'll probably only get two downs for every 4.
Yeah, definitely knocks his value down in PPR.
That puts his value down as well. For Olave, my biggest concern is not Olave himself; it's his quarterback. They were not on the same page last year. It was so frustrating being his owner and watching Olave be open and either not being thrown to or just not getting like the ball being bad targets in general. So that was really frustrating. I'm hoping after a year in an off season that's longer that they get on the same page and they're able to be a dynamic duo. So that's kind of the hope for that one. So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Okay.
Nathan, you traded away pretty much everybody to keep. Who did you end up keeping though? I'm trying to remember. Nico Collins and
I have Nico Collins and AJ Brown.
But you traded for AJ Brown.
I did trade for AJ Brown. I knew. Listen, last year is what it is, right? I went 0-5 to start the season, and I pretty much punted on the season.
That's what I meant when I said
So so I traded everybody away pretty much and just got some picks and invested. Once the vote came through that we were going to 2 keepers, and then the mysterious vote that nobody voted on to keep 4 keepers the next year, I kind of looked at it as okay. I'm calling it what it is. We didn't vote on the 4 keepers. It was just like, hey, everybody voted for 2. The following year we're doing 4. Oh, okay. I guess that must have been secret commissioner meeting, whatever. That's fine. That's fine. We're switching back and forth. As long as we're switching back and forth, I can live with that. No, but anyway, it's I knew I was gonna have to get picks, and so I had all the picks, but then I was looking at my keepers and I'm like, my 2 best players on the team are Tank Dell and Nico Collins from the same team, and so I'm gonna have to do something. And so, Reid and I were able to strike up a deal. And honestly, I was surprised I didn't get more offers. No, I got 0 offers. Reid was the first and only that came to me with an offer. So, I was able to make it happen because I feel like, Reid was able to get back into the earlier rounds a little bit with a second-round pick for me, and I was able to get an elite wide receiver, with a second-round pick, which may not happen in our league. I don't think Brad would still be there by the second round, but So I feel good about where I'm at. The keepers and with my picks. I got the first overall pick. I'm proud to say I haven't had that in a while. I did for many years, and when I first came into the league, I think it was like 3 years in a row I did. But no, it feels good to have that. And I got the first overall, the 5th overall. Yeah. So this is an exciting time when you got the first pick. You're looking at all the players and who you want to take and all of that. So I was pretty sure I had my mind set up that I was going to take somebody, and then I don't know. I just kind of talked myself out of it. Now I'm not sure. So
when Jahmyr Gibbs gets dropped, you kind of rethink.
Yeah. I mean, you never know, because in my head I'm like, okay, this guy's going to get dropped. He's definitely mine. And then somebody else gets dropped, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, maybe not. So,
yeah. Nathan, you're like the it's fascinating because this year, we'll talk more about it, but because we have 2 keepers, this is the most loaded draft we've had in a very, very, very long time.
Right.
And so it's right. Yeah, you have to be the first, but it's kind of like just from afar, I'm like, man, there's so, I know we're just now seeing who was kept, but it's like, there's so many great choices. And of course, you're going to pick, you have multiple picks in the first round, but just, the first overall, it's like that's going to be just be fun to see who you finally fall on for your first overall pick. And, we'll obviously talk after the draft and say, okay, did it work out how you wanted it, with your first two picks? And,
Yeah. Well, it's always funny. I mean, you always have a plan going into your draft, right? Or at least a basic strategy, and kind of like, okay, I'm going to target these guys. And then, and especially, and I guess it's all leagues, but especially in our league, I feel like it never goes exactly as planned because, nobody follows. Like, you'll have 8 people that follow ADP and like go off, rankings or whatever that they have watched or looked into. And then you'll just have like 2 or 3 guys in the league who are just like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a tight end. I'm going to go ahead and take a defense. I'm going to go ahead and, so that these players that you didn't think were going to be there end up being there, and it makes you reconsider your strategy and everything. And the draft is obviously just the first part, and it's not the end of the league by any means, but and it's not even that I have the first pick, but I love the draft. That's why I'm thrilled about having 2 keepers this year, because it just makes it more exciting. There's more players available, more people that you didn't ever think you'd have a chance to get unless you trade. And there are some people in this league that just don't trade or don't trade often. So it gives you the chance to snag some of these players that you may not have a chance at otherwise.
I will say to what Nathan's talking about, that I think, so this is kind of the thought, I guess I should say, is the to why we're trying out this like 2-4-2, kind of keeper thing, is that one, like Nathan's excited about, hey, we got a loaded draft this year. So that's exciting. Some other players get released that otherwise, doing our 3 keepers would not get kept. But what will be interesting is, I think next year when you go into the draft, thinking about this season and the draft, I've got to keep 4 guys next year. I actually think next year there will be more pre-draft trades than there were this year, because I think there's just naturally going to be a team who's like, man, I got 3 keepers, but I do not have a 4th keeper. And then for this last year, they just were loaded with keepers, where they might be like, okay, yeah, I can't keep everybody, so that could be one of the interesting parts. I mean, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Nathan said, I love the draft too. So we're going to try it out. We'll see. It might not be, it might be something fun. It might be something that we just try for a couple years or how many years and then change it up again.
I'm excited about it. I mean, I am. I'm not. I think when I first came into the league, you all were doing 4 keepers, and they got voted to 3, and then we left it at 3 forever. But I'm pretty sure 4 was the normal for a while, and I think it's an interesting wrinkle. Like I said, as long as we're doing the back and forth, that makes it an interesting wrinkle, because you kind of have to. It's not the same every single year. Where it's like, okay, I've got 3 guys that I can keep or whatever. It's like, okay, I've got 2 this year, so I'm like, who are my 2? And if you have a really good team like Jonathan, Aaron, Richard, several people had more than 2, and they had to sit there and say, who are my best 2 that I'm going to keep? And that's a tough decision. You have to be strategic and, well, how do I want to go into the draft? Do I want to more like Richard? Do you want to be more balanced with a running back and wide receiver, or do you want to have 2 of each? Are you more flexible, less flexible? And then, going into the 4 keepers, you're like, okay, now, like you said, do I only have 2 keepers, or do I have 3 keepers? Now I have to make some trades. Or when you have a stacked team, it's like, well, now I can keep 4 of these guys. So maybe I have a chance to, make a run next year as well if you do really well, the previous year. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it too. I think I'm going to be. I'm curious how my season specifically, because of the draft situation that I have. Like, I'm not going to have access to the 36 most available draft to start the draft. So it's going to be interesting how I build my 4. But Nathan, I want to go back. You talked about no one else offered. I thought about offering to you, but I wanted so much for for what I had that there was no way that you would have said yes. So I just didn't want to even insult you with my offer.
Well, I mean, it's like, Jonathan, what was it, a while back, for, CMC, he was like, hey, if you want CMC, it's going to be like 2 first rounds and all that stuff.
Well,
So
I was going to say 3.
or maybe it was, I can't remember what he said, but I mean, his price.
I'm saying I was 3. I
didn't you were going to say 3. Okay.
I wanted 3. So,
yeah, I get it. I mean, I get it. It's a high premium when you have one of the elite guys. And I mean, you have one of the elite guys in CD. Yeah. So,
I mean, if this was a full redraft, I mean, he's a top 3 pick. So,
yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Hopefully, he just doesn't keep holding out throughout the season. Are you nervous?
Well, yeah, I am a little bit, but no, Jerry Jones will pay him. Jerry Jones is dumb. He'll pay him.
Yeah, he will. He will. He won't keep his best player off the. He's getting too old for that. He can't play these games. He may not make it to next season.
Yeah. True. So let's move on to. We started talking about the draft. Let's talk about the draft a little bit. So I want to recap. I want to talk about the first round. So the first round's interesting. Both Nathan and Aaron have 2 picks in the first round. When I do my quick scan, I think that's the only 2. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
And then Nathan, you have 2 in the second round, and I think PC has 2 in the second round.
I think that's right.
And Jonathan has 2 in the second round. Man, Jonathan, how do you have 2 second rounders and you had that team?
Dwayne.
I'm so bad.
Dwayne made the trade for Kyron Williams, man.
It was Dwayne. It's Dwayne.
Dwayne,
we didn't really talk about. We didn't really talk about that. That was kind of interesting. But maybe we didn't talk about it enough, and it'll be just. I don't know. We'll have to ask Dwayne later. I mean, how he, in the season, maybe a little bit early in the season, how he feels about her after the draft. But, he, like you said, like Richard, you thought he was going to keep Mark Andrews. Then he made the trade for Kyron. Yeah. Obviously, Kyron had an amazing season last year. But it is interesting because it's not like, he's drafting 6th. And look, maybe Kyron, who knows, maybe he would be gone by the time he gets to Dwayne then. But it just is interesting because there's so many guys in this draft. So it is interesting that he gave up a second rounder. Like, in other words, he could have kept Andrews, but he decided, no, I'd rather have Kyron give up a second rounder in this draft. So that is an interesting. I would be curious just to get kind of his. Obviously he believes in Kyron, but that was an interesting kind of decision there, just because of where he's at in this draft field and all that.
Yeah, Kyron's getting hyped out of his mind. I feel like he's being hyped at his ceiling. I mean, he was great last year. Don't get me wrong.
He ended the year just fantastic.
Yeah,
it won Jonathan the championship.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess Dwayne's a believer.
And me not getting that tight end.
What did you say?
I said, and it won Jonathan the championship, and me not getting that tight end. That was the difference. Those 2 things.
I guess also too, maybe it also, I don't know. Dwayne's not here, but if Dwayne, you're watching, maybe it tips Dwayne's hand in his belief that, he wanted a running back. He wanted one of his keepers to be a running back. He lost Chubb. Chubb might be done. Who knows? But he wanted to keep Kyron or trade for Kyron. But also, you wonder if he just thought, man, those first 5 picks in front of me, everyone's just going to grab a running back. And I just need to have one as a keeper or what, so.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about, let's go backwards to the keepers actually, because everybody probably, or some of us, I know for me, I tried to predict everybody's keepers. And I wanted to just kind of throw out just real quick. One, there were 5 quarterbacks kept. I think that was more than I thought. It's 4 more than I thought was going to be kept. And then wide receivers, what ended up happening, I'm curious on Dwayne's thoughts on this with how little of wide receivers were actually kept, if he regrets that trade. Because I feel like wide receivers will be drafted a lot more in the first round than running backs. That's kind of my prediction. I think there's going to be maybe a couple tight ends, mostly wide receivers and a couple running backs in the first round. What do you guys think?
I mean, well,
I don't think it's
also,
any QBs in the first round.
What's that?
What?
I don't think I don't think a quarterback is going to go in the first round. I think it's going to be mostly wide receiver, maybe a couple running backs.
League, Richard. Don't sleep on this league.
Yeah, yeah.
I see.
For some people,
they
can't help themselves but grab a quarterback.
I see three. I see three running backs in the first round. I see 0 quarterbacks. You're right. I can't sleep on this league. You're right, but that's just my.
People love quarterbacks in this league.
Richard, Richard, I see. Here's what I see. I see 1 quarterback. I see 1 tight end at least going in the first round. I could be totally wrong on that, but because of this draft in our league, I just see it happening.
Yeah,
I just do.
Right.
So
all right.
And the players that are there. I mean, it's not like they're some pretty amazing players at all these positions. So
I found a resource that lets you mock draft with our league settings, trades, picks, keepers, and everything. So I've mocked 4 times today just because I want to see.
I want to do this. What is this resource?
You got to pay up, but it's monthly, so you can cancel it as soon as you're done with your draft, which is what I do. But
what is it?
It's Fantasy Pros. I'll tell the whole league they can go do it.
No, it
doesn't matter because our league doesn't follow ADP. They follow how they feel about a name,
You're right.
It's great.
Anyway, it gives you an idea of okay, how would the computer draft for this person's team?
Yeah.
And so then they rank it at the end. And all 4 times, this is just a little tidbit I'm sharing with you all. All 4 times, Daryl's team was number 1 in the projected rankings.
Huh.
I don't know what that says about Daryl's team or his keepers, but they must believe in Amon St. Ra and who else did he keep?
Jonathan Taylor.
But anyway, so I see definitely wide receivers are going to go. Definitely wide receiver, definitely running back. You might get somebody may jump at Kelsey, but quarterback, I don't know. It's just such a crapshoot. I would say no. I'm with you, Richard. I would say, oh no, nobody's going to grab a quarterback. But there's just some people that zig when other people zag. So, people are starting to, hey, let's grab this wide receiver. Let's grab this running back. Somebody else is like, well, I'm going to take this. I'm going to take Josh Allen because he's an elite quarterback. So it's hard to tell, but it'll be interesting for sure.
Here's what I think is fascinating about this draft. I mean, it's loaded, and I guess maybe this year. So Richard, there's definitely truth to what you're saying. A lot of people are drafted. Well, I think one of the reasons we see a lot more receivers being drafted in the upper rounds was one, because they just don't get hurt like the running backs do, and most of the time. And so you can bank on them for the most part, being healthy compared to running backs. But also, the top, like you were saying, are the top tier receivers. I mean, the ones that are getting the, 10 plus targets a game or whatever, there's only so many of those. I mean, there's a lot of receivers that you can say, hey, they're good. I'd like to have them on my squad. But those ones that are truly elite, there are only so many of them. And so I think it's kind of pushed them up. But it's fascinating to me because if you look at the draft, the players this year, and it really depends. Like Richard, you're in the 4th round starting. And like Nathan was saying, some people are going to, zig while the others zag or whatever. There's multiple strategies that you can take, even more so this year, because, you could make a case for, filling out your receiver roster later. I mean, there's a lot of guys later that could be a real asset to your team. And that typically is true. But running back, there are so many starting running backs that you look at the name, you look at the person, you're like, oh, that's disgusting. But the reality is they're starting running backs, and they're going to be guys that go later in the draft. So, if you're one of those, you're saying, hey, I'm going to be filling up my backfield later than a lot of people, you might end up finding some really good quality running backs. I mean, they're not going to be, the top ones, but they might end up being a lot better than people think because they're just a guy. Right. I mean, I'm just going to throw out a random name. nobody likes to see this, but Devin Singletary, it's the Giants, but he's the guy. I mean, and even if the team's bad, I mean, if you got the guy who's going to, whatever, catch dump offs, he's going to get, I mean, he's still got value, even though nobody's like, oh, I'm really excited about it. So it is interesting. And like Nathan was saying, tight end. I mean, there's a lot of tight end. We have all the tight ends released, and it's more deep than it has been in the past, maybe ever. And
volume
so, you can
volume is key.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can make a case to either get one of the top guys or wait. The quarterback, our league loves quarterbacks. Well, there are some guys that, you can make a case, and this is true for, we talked about it last year, maybe even the last 2 years, but there's usually about those top 5 quarterbacks that just are above the rest. And usually when you're in the season, nobody's going to trade those unless they just really are like hurting in the roster. And they're like, hey, I've got to get other positions. I mean, most of those people have top 5 quarterbacks. They're just keeping them because it's a 1 quarterback league, and they're just, you can't make up for that at the quarterback position. So, it's going to be really fascinating to see how it all plays out. I mean, there's so many strategies people can take. I think even more so this year than last year.
All right. So on my mock draft that I did, I'm just going to share the numbers. So this is consensus ADP across. It collects ADP from not every, but most fantasy draft places. So like ESPN, CBS, Yahoo, Sleeper, collects them all on where these guys are going. So in my mock draft, in the first round, again, this is with our settings for our league, so it includes keepers and everything like that, who everybody already has. There were 5 running backs taken, 4 wide receivers taken, 2 tight ends taken, 0 quarterbacks, and 0 defenses. That's good, and kickers. So, I mean, and that's obviously computer, going off of ADP, where these guys are going, has nothing to, but it does take into account, which is why I like this thing. It does take into account what each team needs. So like, if I kept 2 wide receivers, it would suggest to me, hey, you need a running back. But, it does that for everybody else's teams too, because it simulates their teams. So it knows what they need, and it goes after those players that are on there. But like I said, 2 tight ends, 4 wide receivers, 5 running backs, no quarterbacks. So you might be right. You might be right.
We'll see.
Yeah. What do you guys? What do you? So Richard, you're thinking a lot of receivers.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be?
No, I'm trying to influence people to not pick running back.
Well, no, but I'm curious now because I like I said, I think this list of running backs this year, there's a lot of it's fascinating because there's so many. I mean, there's running backs who change teams. There's running backs who have had some great seasons that are going to like there's some question marks with a lot of these running backs, but there's also like, man, you could see them just having a great year. So, Richard, do you think that there's going to be a couple of running backs that fall in the second round that are going to maybe be a little surprising?
Yeah, I think so. I think Henry's not going to be in the first round. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I mean, that's because he's getting pushed by wide receivers. He's being pushed by tight ends and other running backs that are younger.
Well, it is. We are at the point where a lot of this is
the fantasy football. This is a Lake Placid Bumblebee 2 in the fantasy football league. This is a completely different league than most people.
Which is why it's so great. It's because it's like, let's look at ADP. Oh, well, it's like,
What were you going to say next time, Tom?
What? Say that again.
You were saying something. I didn't let you.
Oh, I was just saying we're at a point now in fantasy football where, sorry, I have a visitor. Give me just a second.
What were you going to say, Reid?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. That's what happens. So
let
no,
me say, there's a lot of running backs that are enticing to have as your number one. But the fact is that a lot of people kept running backs and they kept wide receivers. And if they look at the history of the league in the last 5-6 years, wide receivers are a big deal for a championship. Running backs, I don't know if they are.
well, I mean, I guess, Jonathan, the champion last year, would say so. I mean, he had CMC, Kyron Williams, and Rashad White, which was like.
Yeah, but Kyron Williams was not drafted.
True. No, true. I mean, that is right. But I mean, that is kind of the part of fantasy football where it's like, fine, you have a couple of your top tier guys, which, like Nathan was saying, there's not that many workhorse guys anymore. Then it's also the other part of it is like, how do I find, that guy that breaks out or that, and it could come off the waiver wire, but just that person that, man, they just have that season. Because you do, I mean, it's hard because you're right. I love receivers, especially PPR, our league. I mean, having those top tier, but you do. I mean, unless you're just totally loaded at every other position, you do need at least one of those running backs who just can be one of the top ones. Typically, I mean, we've had some teams, I guess, where they were just loaded at other positions, but that would be the challenge. I think I guess that's partly what I was getting at. We have all these running backs with a lot of question marks. But have potential. You could see a path to where they have an RB1 type season and they're just have a career year. So that would be and a lot of running backs changing teams. So I mean you have Josh Jacobs, right? We've seen greatness from him. Now he's on the Packers. Of course, we talked about Derrick Henry, Eckler. Although it seems like Eckler's kind of now on the downside.
Kind of a shell of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. I mean, you have a lot of guys that are reaching that cliff point in their careers where it's like, once they hit that point, they're gone. They just stop producing. Mixon's getting to that point. Eckler's getting to that point. Derrick Henry, he's a physical freak. So it's hard to tell if I feel like with Henry, it's just going to happen like one day, where it's like he's chugging along. And then one year somebody's going to draft him high and he's just going to absolutely fall off the cliff. And it could be this year. When you change teams, how often do you see a player that goes to a new team and succeeds?
Not really.
I don't feel like it's very often. I feel like for the most part, once they change schemes, they change to a new team, they kind of either fall to the background or,
I can think of Raheem Mostert's the only one.
Yeah. LaDainian Tomlinson with the Jets. I think he did decent, right, for a season or two. And but it's just one of those things where it's really hard to gauge. You see their brand name and you're like, oh man, I want to take them. But I think most experts are saying, fantasy experts, which are just people that guess really well. Most people are saying that wide receivers, I think it was the Fantasy Footballers, I was listening to them not too long ago, and they were talking about how the top 16, maybe it was less than that, maybe it was 14 receivers ended up doing at even or better than their ADP. So their value was much better. Whereas running backs the last couple seasons have been much, much smaller on getting your money back, your rate of return for drafting them so high. I think it was like 6 running backs have given you back what you invested in them, like first round picks and stuff like that. So there's definitely been a historical amount of busts at running back. And that may be injury, that may be new team, there's a whole list of reasons. But there's the strategy to go zero running back or hero running back is a new one that people are adopting. Just getting one guy that puts up consistent stats throughout the season and then just hammering wide receiver, tight end, quarterback. There's a lot of different strategies, but I think Richard's right that wide receiver is definitely, especially with us with the flex, it's at a premium.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my season was really good last year because I drafted so many good wide receivers at the beginning of the year for me.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course because they don't. I was going to say just that they don't, because I mean, obviously everybody, it's football, players get hurt, and we saw receivers get hurt. But I mean, for the most part, they are a safer bet not to get hurt than running backs. And so if you really hit, like Nathan said, if you just load up like on receivers and other positions, then that at least, if you don't make it with running backs, then then you have an opportunity to maybe make a trade because you're so deep, at that position where you say, okay, hey, I need to make a move. I'll make a move. Also, this year, so the zero RB strategy, which, of course, we're all talking about our draft. Of course, we're a keeper league, so it's even different there because we have to, as owners, we have to think about, okay, I'm drafting this guy. I want to win this year, and that's what you're thinking about. But it's a keeper league, so we all have to think about, oh, hey, is this guy maybe just somebody I want to because he's going to be an awesome keeper. So that always factors in a little bit in our draft. But, it's with running back. I mean, if you went zero RB or kind of something like that, I mean, you can find – I mean, there's some backfields. So let's go talk about this. So Cleveland, Chubb, they're saying Chubb, he's probably not going to be back until about closer to middle of the season, or whatever. I mean, if everything progresses. In Carolina, the rookie running back, he's probably not going to be back until I think I just read it's like week 3 or 4 from his ACL. So, you're going to have some running backs for, the first part of the season that may be a starter that aren't, in the second half of the season. So, there's ways that you can fill out your roster, and
who is the lead back in Carolina right now?
As the first rookie running back, they drafted Brooks in the second round. I think he played for Texas.
Yeah.
But he tore his ACL towards the end of last year, I think. And so he's coming back from that.
Yeah.
Chubba Hubbard now?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still there. Yeah. And I think Miles Sanders is still there.
Oh, yeah, Miles Sanders, that guy.
Yeah.
I had some stock in him last year. That was a mistake. Not in our league, but in a different league, and he was disappointing.
It was. Yeah.
But
Richard, we didn't talk about the new divisions.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Pull it up. Let me pull it up. Standings overall breakdown. So, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so Richard, while you're finding that, let me do this Secret Society Commissioner's advertisement. No, so we've got. So let me just say this: if anybody watches, I got to post it. So this is a wrinkle that we've added to this season. So we've talked about it on Tuna Buzz. It's kind of it gained steam, but we are going to try out. So what we're doing now, since we've added like a consolation playoff. We are now doing it this year that whoever wins the consolation playoff will own the first overall pick throughout every single round in the draft the following year. Now, the thing about it, and this is what we talked about, and so we're trying it out. We'll see how it goes, but we think it'll be fun. One, just because it keeps everybody fully engaged. You can't truly like tank. Like if you're just like, man, I'm going to get guaranteed first pick. We're saying, well, no, you're not guaranteed it. But then also teams, you want to get the first pick. So if you just miss the playoffs, hey, you could still get the first overall pick. We thought it'd be really fun. But here's one thing I want to, and I'll post it on the message board at some point just so people understand. All we are doing with the consolation bracket is if you win, then you get the first overall pick in every round. However, the rest of the 5 that didn't make the playoffs, it's going to go just as it will go just as the final regular season standings end. So if you're like, so let's just say I'm the worst team. Yeah. So let's say I'm the worst team this next year. Like I'm horrible. The best, the worst I'm going to, get for a draft pick is the second overall pick in every round. In other words, I'm not guaranteed. Nobody's guaranteed unless you win. You got to win the playoff consolation bracket. But then the rest of the standings will just end how it was in the regular season. So that way, if you're like truly terrible, it's not like you're getting punished. Like, oh, I couldn't even win. I'm so bad, and then I could, I didn't even get a top tier pick because I was so bad. So if you're just truly bad, like you had tons of injuries and all that, you're still going to at worst get like the second overall pick. We're just trying to maybe, make a little twist to the league and make it more fun since we have a competition.
is the twist called the Nathan rule? Because I feel like every time something happens with me where I won the championship with some trading that was a little whatever frowned upon, then there's all these rules the next season, and then I tank because my team is terrible, and like 8 other teams have tanked years before that. But now that I did it, we got to have a rule where you can't just tank and get the first overall.
I wanted to do just for the record, Nathan.
First, you guys keep coming after me. All right,
Nathan. I've brought this up to Reid, and Reid can attest to this. I've brought this. What they're thinking. I brought this up before you did that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I just,
I'm not. I was not part of the decision process on this. I just came up with the idea, or I came up with
one together, and it makes two
on my own.
No, I like the idea. Honestly, I think it makes it more exciting, gives you more incentive.
I think trading is going to be interesting. I mean, because you can truly tank, and if you want to tank, you can, but you're not going to be getting the second overall pick. You have to live with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there'll still be, we know there'll be trading. Like, if you're bad and you're just like, hey, I want to get picks, but it won't be the same. Like, hey, I'm guaranteed to have the first overall because, so-and-so, to be. Yeah. You might end up, if there's some trade, you might end up with the first overall pick because somebody goes and, I don't know, so, but yeah, it's going to add a little bit, to somebody. Because even if you're a team where you traded away your first overall pick and you're like, well, man, I don't have my first round pick. Hey, if you win the consolation, you're picking first in every round. So that is really valuable, beyond even just the first overall pick. So
for sure,
it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Richard, what do we got? Divisions.
All right, divisions. I'll start with mine because it always shows up on top. The Big I division. I'm really excited about this year because I don't know if I've ever been in a division with Daryl before. So I'm excited to be with Daryl. I think I've done it I'm with Daryl, I'm with Dwayne, and I'm with Donald. So I got it's triple D and an R. DDDR. I don't know. There's got to be some sort of joke in there, but I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a fun season for the 4 of us, battling it out, trying to see who gets to go on top. And I look forward to the Big I, see who we produce at the end of the season. The next we got Dogtooth Division, which is the Thayers and John Mack. So, and then for the Skipjack Division, we've got the Camerons and Coach. So I kind of pointed it out in chat. I'll point it out again. It seems like it was very family focused as far as the divisions, which I thought was pretty cool. Family. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I'm curious, what was the decision making on who went with which family?
That was just it was really just trying to figure out who hadn't been not putting Bruce. Like Bruce was in, now I'm gonna have to go back, but not putting Bruce with somebody, if he was one division, not putting, kind of splitting it up. So like, for instance, Nathan was with John Mack, but I haven't been with John Mack in division for a while. So, it was trying to, okay, hey, we have families, but then, what's kind of the makeup. So like with Dwayne and Daryl, I was trying to remember the last time, like Donald was with them, you were with them. So it was like, okay, let's put that together. And then, and then it was just kind of filling out the Cameron Thayer one. And, that was it. It wasn't anything like, we didn't do anything special. It was just more, okay, we've got the family part, but then it was, okay, let's just mix it up, not doing something, don't stick somebody with a group of people that he mostly has been with, try to mix it up as much as we can.
Yeah.
That was really the thought. I've been so John Mack is in the Thayer division. I've been in, between, we've all been in a division with somebody, but, you're just trying to, hey, I haven't been with that person in a while or whatever, so.
Yeah.
It feels like,
go ahead.
It feels like this is just collusion to ensure that a Cameron or a Thayer wins the championship every year.
Well,
Richard, there are 6 teams in the playoffs.
From my perspective, it's collusion so that brothers cannot trade with brothers because they're enemies. You know what I'm saying? Not that that's ever stopped me from trading with somebody in my own division, Richard. We're not trade all the time and we're in the division together, but no, it's actually funny because when we switch up the divisions, I don't think I've ever been with Bruce, and I don't think I've ever been with Jonathan. I think I've been with everybody else but I don't think I know I've never been with Bruce, and I'm like 99% sure I've never been in a division with Jonathan. Just interesting since it's been like 18 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, this will be fun. We'll do this for the next 2 years. And actually, this idea was, I don't know, I think it was Aaron who kind of posed the idea of doing like kind of a family separated divisions or whatever, or doing families together and then filling out the rest. So that's really where it came. It didn't come from any of us. We were just, I remember, I think it was Aaron, and somebody had mentioned that. And I was like, oh, that could be kind of fun. So, yeah. Trust me, it's not, I mean, I'm looking, we're talking about Nathan and Aaron. I'm in that division with them, and they got each 2 first-round picks before I pick. I mean, that's like, ooh, man.
Yeah, I don't know what you're thinking, Reid. That's crazy.
Nathan's got 4 in the first 2 rounds.
Well, I did kind of speak it out. I said, hey, if I'm the worst team next year, it might actually happen.
So Nathan, are you feeling pretty confident? Because you have, you have to feel confident, but you're
5 picks round 1 to 3.
You have 5 between 1 and 3, right?
Yep.
And then you don't have any in the 4. Because I have
none in the 4th, and I think none in the 5th. I don't think I draft again until the 6th round.
Okay.
So
do you feel like you have a good strategy going forward for the draft?
Yes, for the most part. I mean, there's definitely, and that's why I've been doing those mock drafts, just because I want to see what it looks like if I take a different position. Like, okay, what's it look like if I take a wide receiver first overall? What's it look like if I take a running back, first overall? What's it look like if I take a quarterback first overall, which I will not be doing. But just to see, it grades your team at the end, and it gives me a chance to look at the whole team and say, man, I really like this team. I like the way my team looks when I draft this certain way versus I don't like how my team looks when I draft this certain way. And trust me, I've only done 4 so far. I'll probably do a few more before we draft. But the ones that I've done, there's been some that I'm like, man, I really like that team. And there's been others where I'm like, I'm really thin at, whatever position. But I think I have a basic idea, of like your picks are in the front, right? Instead of it being spread out. So I know my picks are in the front. I know that there's certain positions that I need to come away with just because, in those middle rounds, the 4th and 5th round, there's going to be a ton of really good players there that I'm not going to have a chance at. So I just know it's like, okay, I may need to look at tight end earlier than I want to. I may need to look at quarterback. It's just a different strategy than when it's just straight linear, where it's like I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th, 6th round, and you have that time to kind of balance it out. So, but yeah, I feel like I have a pretty good strategy going into it. I'm not stuck to a certain strategy. Like I said, it's so hard to tell with our league sometimes. I mean, if people start making a run on a certain position, I'm gonna, I might look and see, hey, I know I've already got 2 wide receivers, but there's an elite wide receiver that nobody's taken. I might just go ahead and take them. It really just depends on what everybody else does. I think I've got the 1st and 5th overall in the 1st round. So yeah, I feel confident. I think it'll give me a pretty big boost. I'm just going to hopefully not make a fool out of myself and, not pick somebody that's an absolute dud. But
let me ask you, well, Nathan, this would be my advice, Nathan, to you, which I've never, your draft pick like early, that's pretty awesome. So I don't know how many years ago I had a bunch of picks in the early rounds, and you definitely, like, you get all these great players, but man, you can definitely screw it up. I still have regrets. I don't remember where it was. We'd have to go back and look, but I still remember when Dwayne, it was kind of like this year, except we were still keeping 3. But I remember Dwayne released Patrick Mahomes. And I'm sitting there, and Patrick Mahomes is like, this is not early first. This is like we're going to the second round or whatever. And I'm sitting there like, oh, yeah, Mahomes is still there. And I'm like, and I picked whoever who got hurt and busted. And then PC picked Mahomes. And I'm like, what was I doing? Because, he's awesome. He's amazing. So it's like, it's just one of those things. Like sometimes you overthink it. You're like, why didn't I just take the obvious, But you're going to get great players regardless. So,
Reid, I thought
let me ask you guys this.
Reid, I thought your advice was going to be don't draft 3 Bears in the first 3 rounds.
Justin Fields, DJ Moore, Montgomery.
Hey, DJ Moore was great last year. Okay.
Anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
So I know what I was going to say was, what do you guys? How much pull do you guys have in the draft versus best available player versus, hey, I just need a position? How much of what's the kind of balance that you guys feel with that in our draft? Because our draft, is wonky. And,
are you asking how do I draft? What players win?
No, yeah, no. But I mean, do you feel are you more hey, I just want best overall for the most part, or do you feel no, I've really got to attack positions, more than best overall? I mean, how much do you guys feel that? I mean, we kind of do both, but
Well, this year is really different for me in the sense of it's not at all, because I feel like every year I have this problem, which is I trade away my first 2 rounds of draft picks. But for me this year, I'm looking at it's going to be running back for me for the 4th round, or when I start picking in the 4th round, just because I need to grab them before people start picking their 3rd running backs. And I'm getting really stuck. But I'm going to keep an eye out at what's going to be available in the tight end and quarterback and wide receiver spots. And if there's one that just is sticking out, like Nathan said, I'm gonna pivot. And I can pivot as early as that first pick in the 4th round. I mean, if it's going to be where there's going to be a top 25 wide receiver sitting there in the 4th round, I'm going to be grabbing it. I'm not going to slow down on that one. It'll be
Yeah, I think honestly, you have to be smart, right? You have to have common sense. You can't go into it saying, oh, well, if everybody starts picking running backs, I'm just going to definitely go for wide receiver. You have to look at your team, right? You have to look at what are your needs. I think that there's definitely cases where people probably have, zigged while other people zagged, and they probably should have zagged too because they ended up with terrible running back or a terrible quarterback. There's definitely been times where I was like, because I'm a big believer in waiting for quarterbacks most of the time, but there's definitely been times where I've drafted quarterback way too late because I was zigging while everybody was zagging, and I ended up with an atrocious quarterback or somebody that just
because our league likes quarterbacks, and all of a sudden they have a 3rd quarterback they're drafting, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, and it makes zero sense because you can't start you can only start 1 quarterback. Why do you have 3 quarterbacks, John?
Yes,
it makes no sense.
Because I can.
And then they don't trade them. I'll trade them later, and then you don't, and then they just sit on your bench all year, and they took up a roster spot, and it makes no sense. None. Stop doing it. Hey, I'm off my soapbox now. There's definitely times where you can zag, but you have to keep an eye out. You have to be smart. You have to watch and see what you need and who's available.
Let me show you what I printed out. You mentioned the fantasy footballers.
Yeah,
I use their rankings and their tier system exclusively the past 3 years. Yeah. This is what I like using. So when we're looking at, it, and I'm looking at the tiers in that way, because I like the tier system, it allows me to look at it and say, you know what, Rachaad White, James Cook, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, and Joe Mixon are the same tier. If I'm at that 4th position, that first position in the 4th round, and I've got all 4 available to me, it's kind of like, I could get 2 right away because I have or not right away, but I've got, pick 1, then 9, and then 11 in the 4th round. I could get one of those, or I could pivot to something else that's got maybe a little bit more scarcity as far as the tier is concerned. So that's kind of the way I'm planning on drafting.
Yeah, and that's a smart way to draft. That's you have your tiers, the guys you like, the guys you'll reach for a little bit. There's always somebody I'll reach for. I think the past 5 or 6 drafts, there's always been somebody, that I'm like, hey, I know this guy is probably not going to be there when it gets back to me, whether I traded picks or it's just I'm nervous that he's not going to be there, and I'll grab him. And there's been times where it's worked out really well for me, and there's been times where it did not work out for me, and I jumped too early. So it's a gut call, man. You have to decide for yourself, like, hey, who do I like? Who am I comfortable with on my team?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't do any research before you come into the draft and you stink it up, that's on you. You got to have a little bit of homework. So.
And we all know that in our league, the first 2 rounds, all bets are off on how it's going to go, because I mean, there's even surprises where, we talked about like quarterback, tight end, but there's surprises where like a running back, a receiver that you're just like, how did they fall, to me, or how did they fall, back, to whoever. I mean, it's just, it never goes like, whatever industry experts, ADP, whatever. I mean, it's, you have to be ready. You do have to be ready to pivot, because you just don't know. I mean, you might think like, oh, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have these, this group of people. And then all of a sudden there's going to be that one. You're like, I did not expect them to beat to me, fall to me. So that's, you do have to be.
Never forget DeAndre Hopkins. I got him in like the 5th round of our league one year when Andre Johnson was like toast. He was done. And CBS had him ranked so low. Like, you can't trust the rankings sometimes. Like, I had to go search for him, and I was like, how is he still here in the 5th round? He's a number 1 wide receiver for the Texans. He had a great year that year. I mean, that was probably one of the most memorable instances of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, last year I got so many good wide receivers because they dropped to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that is another example.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep talking about myself. All right. So I want to, we're over an hour here. I want to follow up with one last question. One last question. And I think it's a good one. And I'm hoping you guys enjoy this question. Between Josh and Donald, I want to know what round they're going, and who is going to pick up Ricky Pearsall.
I thought you were going to say Tim Tebow, but okay.
No, it's going to be Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is going to go way early. It's going to be to one of them too.
Josh in the 3rd round. Thank you.
Well, listen. We can just throw this out there because it's all obvious, and I don't know if Daryl watches this, but Daryl loves rookies. So if you want a rookie player, you better get him, because, I mean, gosh, if you go back to last year, Daryl was drafting rookies left and right.
Daryl will snag him up.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm serious. I mean, Daryl was drafting a ton of rookies, and you're like, man, he just kept going, So
that's true. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Driving Ricky Pearsall's price up, as we speak. In fact, Josh Donald, I think you should draft him in the 1st round. I mean, he might not make it back to you, so you better get him.
I almost want Ayuk to be traded just so that it happens more sooner than it would have.
Who knows what's going on with him?
So,
yeah.
Hey, if Ayuk is going to be
we'll
there.
Have to, guys, we're gonna have to.
What's that?
I was gonna say we have to for sure have a post-draft show episode.
Yeah, for sure.
We will.
And we'll answer the Pearsall question.
New year, new me. I'm back.
Nathan's back.
I was absent. I had a baby 2 years ago. Okay, he is a wild man. All right, and it challenged me beyond my wildest dreams. So, I really wasn't interested in talking about my stinky fantasy team last year, especially being exhausted all the time. So I apologize for not being all in last year. I'm not gonna let that happen this year. All right, I'm in here.
Appreciate it.
So you're saying is you have a mini me Captain Insano.
Pretty much. Yeah. I think I somehow created a monster.
Well, Nathan, listen, it might be you and Rich a lot this year. So, I think I'm swapping places with you.
The Tuna Buzz might look like me and Nathan a lot more this year, as we've discussed. So I'm hoping Reid will be able to join us. But you might see Nathan and I more often, and maybe we can rope Aaron in, because he keeps telling me every now and then, he'll tell me like, why aren't you having me on? So
let's do it. Yeah, we'll bring back the
Tuna Buzz. I should have been with you guys for the Tuna Buzz.
Yes,
for the division, the Tuna Buzz division.
Yeah.
Anyway, gentlemen, it's good to see you. No good luck.
Yeah, good to be back.
No luck for me. But no. Have a good draft. Enjoy your week. Enjoy the season. Go Jags.
Godspeed. God bless.
See you the draft.
See ya.